Good evening and welcome to the October 16th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Join me in prayer. Dear God, please help us to open our ears to truly hear one another, open our mouths to share our thoughts with one another, and open our minds to God's wisdom to reveal in each of us His ideas, thoughts, and opinions. We ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Councilman Zipperline.
Here.
Councilman Aragosa.
Here.
Councilman Davis. Councilwoman Rosbowski.
Here.
Supervisor Hensley.
Here, we have a busy night with public hearings, it looks like tonight. The agendas are down at the front here. If you did not receive one, there is one add-on agenda. It is a resolution authorizing the town board in relation to the sale of food and alcohol beverages within town park and the Meadows Park on behalf of the Burn Hills Boston Red Junior Baseball fundraising event. So we'll take that up after item number 21 and before 22, which is new business. It's the only agenda change we have. I'll start on my left with town council reports. I'll start with Councilman Delucy.
Mr. Supervisor, I was happy to attend the open house for the Glenville Hills Fire Department about a week or so ago. It was a great event. We got to see a medical evacuation transport helicopter land. While we were there, we also, during conversation with some of the firefighters, actually had individuals who they came to the open house. They had recently been provided basic life support services by the firefighters, and we're very grateful for that. And basically, we're coming to thank them for what had happened. So attended that. Also attended the groundbreaking for the senior center expansion. Did that yesterday. It was a great event. You were there, Mr. Supervisor, Councilman Sosa was president, Senator Disco. Certainly we look forward to seeing that how that project takes shape. Did want to also just note that obviously November 5th is election day. Folks should make sure they get out and vote. There should be, if you don't vote, I mean obviously you can still complain, but you should engage yourself in the process. It's our civic duty. This is the first year where we have early voting in New York State, and we have 4 early voting sites: the Schenectady Public Library, the Glenville Senior Center, Viaport in Rotterdam, and Niskayuna Town Hall. And early voting commences on Saturday, October 26th, and runs through Sunday, November 3rd with different hours. You go to the Schenectady County Board of Elections website for more information on that. And that's all.
Thank you. Councilman Rosbowski.
Just a couple things, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to congratulate publicly and commend the East Glenville Fire Department who celebrated their 75th anniversary. I was away with my daughter in Florida for her birthday, so I was unfortunately unable to attend that event. It was very well attended. East Glenville has a number of, well, all of their members are wonderful men and women who serve this community voluntarily and well. So I'd like to congratulate them, and I'd also like to congratulate the Senior Center on the groundbreaking. I'm sorry I couldn't make the event. I had to work. I could not break away, so I was sorry to miss it, but I'm very excited to see the progress going forward and happy to support that project.
Thank you. And let me take one moment to welcome back the member of our board who's been absent. We're glad to have you back, John. We missed you, and we're glad you're doing well.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
what reports would you like to give us?
Actually, I will give you that the police department on October 26th is partaking in the drug take-back. They will be doing that between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Actually in this room of Town Center or Town Hall, and they'll be taking unused drugs, whether it's prescription or over the counter, and they've been partaking in this every time it's been offered, so it's a great opportunity.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Aragosa.
couple things. I did attend the Senior Center groundbreaking. Very happy to have been there for that. I was at the Glenville Hills and Thomas Corners open houses. The things that those people do and their work is very important to everybody in the town. Lastly, I'll just mention it's leaf season. Keep in mind, as you bring your leaves to the curb, keep them off the street, to the curb, but not on the street. That's it.
Thank you. We'll move on to the public hearing, the first public hearing actually, which will be the public hearing to hear all those interested in comments regarding the 5-year plan for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program beginning with fiscal year 2020. We do have Mr. Mastriani here. Jim Mastriani, if you'd like to maybe address the board first before we open the public hearing.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Mastriani. I'm going to talk about 3 topics, and then I'm going to talk about 3 numbers, and then I can take questions. So the 3 topics are going to be who, what, and why. So who, I'm Jim Mastriani. I'm from Gen Inc. We're in the business of administering Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher programs, and we've been doing this since 1976, founded by my father. And we've been working with the town since 1976 to administer this program. So what is the Housing Choice Voucher Program? It's a program sponsored by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development to help our elderly, our disabled, and our low-income families in the community afford safe, sanitary, and decent housing. And that's done by subsidizing each participant in the program so they are able to take their housing subsidy out to the private market and have a greater choice in the housing that they choose and apply that subsidy, and that subsidy paid directly to the landlord. So why would we want to have a program like this? Well, we know anecdotally, and we know also, the sociologists and economists go out and study this, and that we know that if you have stable housing, you're able to achieve positive outcomes in your life. If you don't have stable housing, very hard to hold a job, very hard to get an education, very hard to be a productive member of the community. And so this is why the federal government, since 1936, has started these types of programs, because they know it's a benefit to the community and to the country at large. So those are the 3 topics. The 3 numbers I want to talk about is that there are 46 participants in the program right now, and 89% of them are elderly or disabled, and the average subsidy is $537. Now there's one more why that I realized I skipped over, and the one more why that I have is that why are we here tonight? And so we have to have this 5-year plan. So this is a small program, and we're a high-performing program, so we just have to do this every 5 years and put together the plan. So the plan is pretty minimalist because it's a small program, but what it comes down to is a handful of goals. And so those goals are, and these are the same goals we had 5 years ago, expand the supply of assisted housing to meet local needs. We internally want to improve the quality of our service through better processes and information service systems. We promote self-sufficiency and asset development of families and individuals in the program. We ensure equal opportunity in housing. And then finally, we reduce fraud and program abuse. So that is all I need to say, but I'm certainly happy to take any questions. It's a very deep program. I know you have a stacked agenda, and I could talk all night, but I know you don't want me to.
Thank you, Mr. Mastriani. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Mastriani?
How many residents do you see within the town of Mastriani?
So this program is working with 46, well, it's 46 families. I don't have the number of how many residents in total, but it's 46 families.
And I believe you heard last time you had a waiting list. Do you still?
We do. And so this waiting list is combined with your neighbors to the south of you in the village of Scotia. And so that combined waiting list is running at, well, there's 113 applicants. 74 of them are on our preference waiting list, which means you live or work within the town borders. And so you move up faster. And so the next person we're going to help was applied in December of 2015. So this is a decent sized waiting list.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. So at this point, I will open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none, it is now closed. The next public hearing is to hear all persons regarding the proposed joint consolidation agreement of the town sewer districts number 6 and 9. Public hearing is now open. If you recall, when we discussed this 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago, feels like 2 years ago. 2 weeks ago, Sewer District 6 is, we've retired its debt, and now it is going to be brought into the mother district, Sewer District 9. It's later on the agenda here, which you'll see the notices of public hearing at your desk. So this is to hear anyone interested in Sewer 6 becoming part of the mother district, Sewer 9 after its debt has been retired. It is open. Anyone wish to be heard on that? Going once, going twice, seeing none, closed. The next public hearing is a public hearing regarding the proposed amendment to Chapter 255, Vehicle and Traffic, the Code of Glenville. This one is the one we talked about at the work session regarding the maximum speed limit of 30 miles per hour on certain highways within the town of Glenville, particularly being Bly Road Extension and Amsterdam Road, which is also known as New York Route 5. And then we talked about the other roads, as you see in the public hearing, Rector Road, Barhart, and Wagner Road. So that public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. The next public hearing is to hear anyone interested in being heard on the assessment rolls for Water District number 11, and extensions number 10 through 48. This is on the assessment roll for Water District 11 and extensions 10 through 48. The public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none. The public hearing is now closed. Next public hearing, to hear anyone interested in making comments regarding the assessment roll for All Clause Sewer District number 1. This is, no, I'm sorry, we skipped one. I was trying to get through quick. The next public hearing is to hear anyone interested in being heard on the assessment roll for Sewer District number 9 and extension number 7. It is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on the public hearing regarding the assessment roll for Sewer District 9 and extension 7? Going once, going twice, seeing none. We'll now get to the public hearing to hear anyone interested in making comments regarding the assessment roll for All Clause Sewer District number 1. Public hearing is open. Anyone wish to be heard on the assessment roll regarding All Clause Sewer District number 1? Going once, going twice, seeing none. Closed. Last public hearing of the night. To hear anyone interested in making comments on assessment roll for Sewer District number 2. That public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on assessment roll Sewer District number 2? Going once, going twice, seeing none. It's now closed. Councilman Pittavani, aren't you glad you came back for that? So now we'll move on to privilege of the floor, item number 12. We do not have anyone signed up. Anyone wish to be heard at privilege of the floor? Open the floor. Anyone wish to be heard at privilege of the floor? Going once, going twice. Yes, sir. Mr. Lindsay.
My name is Dave Lindsay. I live at 14 Red Coach Drive in Scotia. I'd like to just talk about a concern that I have that's been brought up in the media recently in regard to a potential conflict of interest of a Village of Scotia employee potentially being on the Glenville Town Board if they're successful in their bid on election day. I've got real concerns about someone's ability to vote in favor of things, to have influence over things that could either enhance or protect their job in another municipality with their power to vote on allocated funds from one municipality to another. Recently, we were at a meeting and some of Mr. Kohout's supporters suggested that all he would have to do is recuse himself. That would indicate to me that he already knows that there's a conflict of interest, because why would you recuse yourself unless there was a conflict of interest? That's very concerning to me. in a recent Times Union article, as the Village Public Works Superintendent, as he stated, he's in charge of street maintenance, not highway maintenance. When you start splitting hairs between highways and streets and avenues, roads, lanes, you know you have a real ethical issue on your hands. The Attorney General's opinion back in 1985 was very clear in that somebody who was an employee, particularly a highway superintendent in a village, could not be on a town board who was of the same, in the same town, where the village lay in the town. The concern I have is that people want to have confidence in their government that people aren't on a board for their own personal gain. And that would be a real concern of mine when someone has the ability to vote to allocate funds to protect their position at another municipality. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Or it's not this matter, it's a public hearing. On any matter? Sir.
My name is Robert Derrick. I'm the resident of the town of Glenville. I've been for many years. The previous speaker actually took all my talking points, but I want to just second everything he said. I feel that you can't serve two masters, and I feel that it's a real conflict, and it will just lead to problems down the road. In this great town that we live in, I don't think we want to have a Joe Biden type problem. So, with all due respect, I think he should recuse himself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on the privilege of the floor? Anyone else? Going once, going twice, seeing none, the privilege of the floor is now closed. We'll now move to supervisor's comments to the board. Just a few updates. As you already heard earlier in the reports, we did break ground on the senior center. I do want to congratulate Ron and Vicki and all the seniors, and just elaborate a little bit more, because it's really a great story of partnership here in the town. I know Gina was part of the board back. We were trying to remember how long ago it was when I first came into that work session, but I remember El Boulant and Sid Ramatar were on the board, and so that has to go back at least 6 years or so. That would be 10 years. So. No, because I think it's 6-ish, but I could be wrong on that. But it's been a long time. And at the time, I remember our initial reaction was, there's no way we can put money into this thing. So we did what we always do. We go hard at work and find grants, and we were able to find a grant that covered half of it. And then we still said, I don't know how we do it, but as I mentioned at my comments at the groundbreaking, it's really this board's commitment and all those members of the board previously, Sid Ramatar, El Boulant, Jim Martin, that made sure that we protected our fund balance, that we were able to save into a capital reserve fund, so that we're able to make these investments in the senior center, in our parks, in our sidewalks, in our paving plan. And this is just another story of what that commitment, what that philosophy means. So when people start talking about rating fund balances for tax relief in particular, they're saying that these projects aren't important. These projects aren't things that we're going to finance, we're going to be able to pay for in the future. So it was the vision of this board, and I want to thank you, Gina in particular. John, you've been there, you were with us on
I was there also, maybe invisible, but I was there.
No, you were there. And thank our new members, Mike and Mike, for all their commitment to this important project. We hope to have a ribbon cutting in March, so they'll be working pretty quickly through it. I understand dirt is already flying, so that's good. And we might have run into a problem already, but nothing we can't fix, and we'll work around, potentially with a little more money, but apparently the water line wasn't where it was supposed to be on the drawing, so we're working through that. Another important project we've been working a long time on is the corner here at Route 50. The trees, the poles are finally down, they're gone, in case you haven't noticed that. It looks great. I've gotten a ton of compliments on it. People are very excited. First National Bank will be planting a Christmas tree or an evergreen tree there within the next week and a half. And and that will be the tree we'll forever decorate. We'll keep it at a reasonable height so that we can continue to decorate that tree, and that will be our community tree going forward, so we don't have to have any more complaints about how small our Christmas tree is every year in that space. So that's very exciting. Metroplex has also already indicated they'll be giving us some funds to do some more hardscape and landscape in the spring. So we're finally going to have this defined corner in the center of town center that just, I think, is looking great, and people are very happy with it. So that's another great story. Speaking of sidewalks, our path to Woodhaven is technically open. The Jim Burmaster Trail will be named in a ceremony potentially this fall, but more likely in the spring. We are working with a sign maker trying to get an appropriate sign. It's taken longer than we anticipated, but we've seen people use the trail. Today alone, I saw 5 different, just coming and going from here, 5 different groups using the trail throughout the day, so that's very good news. I also was at the East Glenville Fire Department to celebrate their 75th year. We congratulate them on that important milestone. I also was at Glenville Hill Fire Department at their open house, and want to congratulate them for all the good work they do up in West Glenville area. I also had an opportunity to tour the APF's, what they call cat condos. It was actually pretty cool. They have, as you know, because we had to approve the expansion in that zone, they have a new room for cats, and they have these condominiums that they're so much happier, they're so much more social, and they're running around playing, and they brought me in. I've never had a cat in my life, but it was nice. They do really good work there, and we're proud of the work they do here in not just in our town, but around our town. I'm very proud of that. You might have saw ESAM, largely by the work that we do here by providing them with a $1,000 grant in our budget, is hosting again for the 4th year in a row Glenville Free Day. So if you're a Glenville resident, which includes the Village of Scotia, on this weekend, the 19th and the 20th, between 8 and 4, you will receive your entire family, everybody you bring with you, as long as they're a resident, will receive admission to the museum free. It's one of our great gems in the town, so I anticipate that we'll get a good visitation there. I encourage everyone to stop by and see everything they're doing there. It's a wonderful museum. Everybody, adults, just have to prove their residency. One of the tough things is there's like 6 zip codes in the town of Glenville. They thought there were only 2, and so I already got calls on that today. So I'm trying to explain to them that they have to make sure they look at addresses, because there are at least 6 different zip codes in the town of Glenville. So be prepared for that. A notice of violation, just to update you on where we are with the railroad graffiti bridge. A notice of violation went out. We had to wait for the code, and it's kind of inside, technical stuff, but we had to wait until our software was updated before we could issue the notice of violation. Software was updated, complete today, so the notice of violation went today, so we'll anticipate where we're going to be with that notice. I don't anticipate the railroad company is going to accept it lightly, but just so you know, it's out, and we'll see what kind of response we'll get going forward. I do want to point out one thing. I think just one thing. We'll see where it goes. Wait, you know what? I think it's more appropriate if we have a budget discussion and talk about it in the budget discussion. So really, that's all I have for tonight. And any questions or comments from me?
Mr. Graham, just with respect to the sign on the perimeter trail in Indian Meadows, just something that I think we need to not lose sight of. It does need to be addressed, particularly in light of our recent law that we passed. We should be in compliance with our own law. So.
We didn't lose sight of it. Vicki and I just had a conversation on it today, in fact. And we believe it's a great, both that sign and another were scout projects. They're both in somewhat disrepair, and they would be a great scout project going forward. So we're going to try to get a scout to address that. So it's on the radar, but we just had a conversation today about that. Okay. Anything else for me? Thank you. to the agenda. We'll move to item 14, which is a resolution, if there's a resolution, amending the 2020 tentative budget and adopting the preliminary budget for 2020, and to schedule a public hearing for November 6th at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Have a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. As you know, this is the resolution that will move the tentative budget to a preliminary budget prior to the final budget. Town law requires a public hearing to be held on this, and so this public hearing is set for Wednesday, November 6th, here in this room. And the clerk will notify, as pursuant to town law, publish and post that notice in accordance with all the rules and regulations. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Supervisor, with respect to the amending portion of the budget, what is being amended?
Nothing currently. We got the proposal. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
I would propose to amendment to the budget, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the 2020 Town of Glenville proposed budget to, with regard to the UCC contractual expense line item in that budget. I propose by amendment to lower it by $51,000, and in addition, I would propose, my motion would also propose to lower the town general tax levy by $51,000.
So we have a motion currently to amend. We have a motion to amend the budget by $51,000, lowering the UCC line, contractual line, and then lowering the tax levy line in same amounts.
Yes.
All right, so that's a motion that's acceptable, correct? Mr. Attorney? Yes.
Line items.
Yes, we have line items identified. Okay, so we need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, since Glenville joined the UCC in 2015, we have been overcharged by Schenectady County every year for this service. This is due to the county overinflating the UCC budget every year, with this entire cost passed on to the municipalities. Then, the following year, the county does a reconciliation which refunds the overpayments back to the municipalities. In the first 4 years of the UCC, Glenville and Scotia residents were overcharged a total of $241,200, or $60,300 per year. In 2015, we were in fact charged $727,239, but only actually owed $637,418. In 2016, we were charged $734,003, but only actually owed $691,773. In 2017, we were charged $748,665, but only actually owed $704,712. In 2018, we were charged $760,902, but only actually owed $695,733. The result is that all municipalities in the UCC must overtax their residents based on the inflated budget adopted by the county, and then wait for a refund the following year. In effect, Glenville and the other municipalities have been providing Schenectady County with an interest-free loan every single year on the backs of our town and village taxpayers. The annual increase in UCC costs passed on to the municipalities is also contrary to the county claiming no tax increases in recent years. Overinflating and raising UCC costs every year is in fact a tax increase on our local residents. The 2020 UCC budget calls for Glenville to pay almost $791,000 to the county, an increase of $63,000 in 5 years. This is a 9% county tax increase on town and village residents within the last 5 years. Our residents should not have to pay for the county for UCC costs that don't exist. A great example of UCC budget gains can be seen in the health insurance line. Despite staffing levels being the same, the 2020 UCC budget includes health insurance expenses 44%. That's 44% above the actual 2018 expense. I would note that our town line for health insurance only increased 5%. For the rest of the entire county budget, the health insurance lines are only 11% above the actual 2018 expenses. Why should Glenville and Scotia residents pay for this non-existent expense? This is why I'm proposing that we lower the UCC expense in the 2020 town budget by $51,000. This will provide tax savings to town and village residents and insert a more realistic number for the expected actual UCC expense. As a result of this budget amendment, the proposed tax rate for 2020 will then be lowered lowered to 2%. This proposal would also save the average village homeowner $2.80 per year and the average town homeowner $4.20 in 2020.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on that?
I'd like to make an inquiry. Has this proposal been vetted through the comptroller's office as far as, is this a sustainable number? Meaning, is this a number that, initially we were given a number by Mr. Cuthbert as part of the proposed budget. Now Councilwoman Worsbowski seeks to lower that number, and I certainly heard her reasoning behind it. My concern is this a number by which we're going to ultimately have to draw from fund balance at the end of the year, or is this in line with what our actual cost is going to be? And what is the source for that? And maybe that question should be directed to Ms. Worsbowski since she made the amendment.
Well, as I stated, in 2015, we were charged $727,239, but only actually owed $637,418. In 2016, we were charged $734,030, but only actually owed $691,773. In 2017, we were charged $748,665, but only actually owed $704,712. And in 2018, we were charged $760,902, but only actually owed $695,733. I believe that these are numbers that Jason has reconciled, that he gave them to me, and I do trust his reasoning and his ability to add, subtract, multiply, and divide accurately, since that is his job. So we were overcharged in the first 4 years $241,200 or $60,300 per year. Now, I'm not asking to reduce it by the full amount that we appear to possibly be overpaying. I'm only asking to reduce it enough so that we are still able to cover the actual cost of that line.
So you're
Mr. Galuski, before you continue, and this is my budget we're amending, and I am the chief financial officer, so I will answer the question. You asked a question. If you want an answer, I will help you with the answer. I am the chief fiscal officer. If you think it's inappropriate for me to answer, I'd be very shocked by that assertion.
curious to hear again.
So I'm sure you are, because I know it's a genuine question. I can see by the look on your face. We get overcharged, and as the councilwoman has said, we get paid back. So what is happening here is an overinflation of a charge to the taxpayer. So under the current, what we have proposed currently, the taxpayer would pay more on historic data than they need to pay, and we get that refund back. Now you yourself, Mr. Galuski, have been very concerned about inflation in the health insurance lines. Is that true?
Very true.
You've been very concerned about getting this tax rate down. Is that true?
That's true.
So we found a place where we have inflation in the health insurance line. It happens to be a county budget, and I understand that pains you greatly. But what is the concern if we get the money back? Why would you want to tax the resident?
Sure. So I think the representations here are being disingenuous, and I think they're being disingenuous twofold. One, anytime that, if what you're saying is that the money is ultimately paid back to the town of Glenville, the town receives that money. So essentially that money goes to a pot somewhere, presumably fund balance, that can be used at a later date, perhaps in the next fiscal year, to help balance out a budget. Maybe a more appropriate question to ask is, where has that money gone when we've received that money in years past? I don't think you're not proposing something where we're actually cutting money. You're just saying, we're going to roll the dice, hope that despite being charged an amount, we're going to pay less, and hope that what we pay is in line with what the service actually renders. And that to me is risky budgeting. And frankly, it's not something I'm comfortable with at this moment, based on data that I haven't had a chance to verify. Furthermore, anytime you're talking about pulling money, and this has been an argument that we've had for some time now, but anytime you're talking about pulling money from different pots, and I realize that the town of Glenville views our pots as the A fund, the B fund, and our various funds, you're also talking about a municipal entity that we all pay taxes to. So we are all county taxpayers, and to say that we're essentially pulling money that would be paid into a different tax, I think is disingenuous to pull from that and shift the burdens around. I don't necessarily think that that's a fair, genuine argument, because essentially that runs the risk of shorting another tax line that all Glenville and Scotia residents would have to pay into. So under your proposal, and I want to be very clear, I'm very happy that we are actively looking at ways to lower the tax rate, which I do think is very high and I'm not comfortable with presently. I'm a little bit concerned, but I will keep an open mind to this. I'm not going to support the amendment tonight, but we have time to consider it, and I'm going to look into it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Again, I just want to repeat that currently this would be, as it is now, an overcharge to the town residents. The money would come back to the town and go into the fund balance. That's what has happened for the past 5 years. How much data here?
Since 2015, so the last 4 years.
Yes.
This will be the 5th year.
So it's a good bet. It's a good gamble. I think your concern, Councilman, is valid. That it's a roll of the dice, and we're going to have to see what the actual charge comes in. But I have asked and have not gotten the answer, which is a trend typically with the county. How can we have a 40% increase? And even Councilman, just take this on its face. How do you get a 40% increase in the health insurance line for one department within the county of Schenectady, and the rest of the departments get 11%? Even the most casual observer would look at that and say, that doesn't make sense. And I would hope you would support protecting our taxpayers.
I do. Mr. Supervisor, we all sat here during budget review with Mr. Cuthbert, our comptroller, and I think it was as I recall, I was the one asking the most questions. I was the one that asked, why are the benefits lines not a steady percentage across the board? And there are a number of factors that go into that. Age of the workforce, number of the workforce, number of retirees, number of changes in the number of employees. There are explanations for that, as Mr. Cuthbert offered. I don't know why there's a 40% increase, and certainly that number on its face sounds large. Perhaps we can get answers.
More troubling is, how does the county employee A in one department get a 40% increase, and county employee B in the same health insurance plan, not billed to the towns, get 11%? I think that's clear. I think that's obvious. How can one county employee in the same health insurance plan get such a large increase in that budget line and the others not? So I think I guess at the end of the day, is what we're saying is, it seems like a pretty safe bet. It's better than 50-50 that this is going to come in lower than what they're projecting, as it has every year since it began.
It sounds like it's going to come in lower, but to predict how it's going to come in lower, and this is no disrespect to Councilwoman Worsbowski, I think that's a little bit, I would like to verify those numbers through financial professionals before I voted to support something like that. I think that runs the risk of being irresponsible budget.
So you think the numbers might be wrong? Not saying they're wrong, they could be.
Yeah, based on the simple fact that she's not a financial professional. And this is something that I think should be first talked to. We know where to go and find the county folks. I know that our finance office has a working relationship with their finance office. This is something that should be talked to between municipalities. We often find ourselves talking about what we can do to do more to work together collaboratively with other municipal entities locally. I don't know why we're just doing this. It strikes me as odd, the timing, but I understand.
You can make your assumptions and your assertions. There's a amendment on the table. I think it's a good amendment by the councilwoman to make sure we're doing all we can to protect our taxpayers. And I'll take any other comments or questions. Seeing none, to vote on the amendment.
Mr. Supervisor, I just would like to make one thing very clear. Our comptroller, who actually is a financial expert and who is in charge of every penny of taxpayer money that comes in and goes out is where I got these numbers from. I didn't just pull them out of the air and hope for the best, okay? I didn't make them up. I didn't find them under a rock with Common Core math. They came from an actual financial advisor who, yes, you're right, has a very good relationship with the financial offices at the county. So I do take a little bit of offense at your comments that I just seem to have materialized these numbers from thin air, which is not the case, as you can see by my well-prepared notes. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So we're on the amendments. We'll be voting on the amendments. A yes is a vote in favor of the amendment, and no is a vote against the amendment, just to be clear. So, no other questions or comments? Please record the vote.
Councilman Catalani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
I'm going to vote no, but I want to just make one statement on why. I'm voting no because if we really wanted to pass this and get it, you wanted to get everybody to support it, we could have heard about it before this. Give us a chance to see what the actual plan is and what's going on, and then I'll come back and talk to you about it. But at this juncture, to just get it here at this meeting, there's no way I can vote yes for that. So I'm a no.
Councilman Godlewski?
Just to explain my vote, I like the 2.0 rate a lot better than 2.5. I'd like to see that keep moving down. I will not support the 2.5 budget, but it appears that we may be moving towards a 2.0 budget, and perhaps we can keep working towards whittling that number down as we move forward. I'm interested to hear from the public on this. Very interested to do research on this, and I will keep an open mind on this proposal, but based on the timing, based on the fact that we don't have the benefit of checking the numbers, and based on what I think is a legitimate concern as to the gamble associated with these numbers, I vote no on the amendment.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Ketzler?
To explain my vote, I am going to vote yes on the amendments. This was something that this budget, this representation that all of a sudden just all showed up here tonight and got a budget in front of us is ludicrous. We've been working, every board member has an opportunity to talk to me about the budget. Not one of the members who voted no on this reached out to me once on this budget. Not once. This is my budget. I'm the fiscal officer of this town, and not one person asked me one question about the budget. We had a work session on this budget, and there was very little productivity in that meeting. Nobody seemed to have a curiosity for the budget, beyond a few little budget lines here and there. Now, I'm explaining my vote. You don't get to just speak when you want. There's very little curiosity on the budget. Nobody's reached out, to my knowledge, and you can tell me otherwise, to the comptroller on any of these questions. And this is something that when we got the bill from the county, we put it into the budget, and we anticipated a discussion by the board. We are now at that point. I am voting yes. This helps protect our taxpayers from an inflated budget line, and it helps us bring our budget in line with the consensus of the board at the time was to try to get to this juncture, and here we are. Resolution passes.
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. The motion to amend passes. We now have before us an amended resolution, 14A, which would be adopting the preliminary budget and scheduling the public hearing for November 6th. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do I
it.
have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilman Pitlavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Just to reconcile this vote with the last vote, this is just to hear from the public as to their concerns or their praise or their feelings regarding the preliminary budget. This is not a final budget. This will also enable council members to go and look at the amendment and other potential amendments before we adopt the final budget. As far as moving the process along, getting to a point where we're ready to hear from the public, I vote yes.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Ketzler?
Yes, resolution passes as amended. Next, resolution 15, adopting the Glenville's 5-year public housing plan for 2020, Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 16, authorizing payment for Bellevue construction in the amount of $6,900. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this is to pay, a resolution to pay a bill that, for Bellamy Construction for work that they did on Clausen Road. We initially approved payment for emergency work that was done in July. They had to go back in August to do some additional repairs. If we pass this resolution tonight, we'll pay that bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 17, adopting local law number 6 in relation to chapter 255 of the vehicle traffic law. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? You don't have to read it all, John. You don't have to read it all. This is the speed limit in the roads that I mentioned
Yes.
earlier. Any other questions or comments? This is really just passing the law from what we just had a public hearing on. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please report.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, establishing the Town of Glenville Greenway Feasibility Study Committee. Do I have a motion?
So
Do I
moved.
have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on this? Just so you know, we received a grant, I think you know years ago now, that we're finally getting to the execution point of having a study done for a town-wide bike path, pedestrian path, which is being called the Greenway Feasibility Study. This is through the Empire State Development, and one of the things we need to do, working with Behan Consulting and Chase Engineering on this project, is create a committee. And so the committee has been created. You see the folks there. There is one person missing from this committee. So I need to make, is it a technical thing if the person is left off, or is it an amendment?
I think you probably amended it.
Okay. So we do have a missing member of this committee, number 9. And by my invitation, I asked Mayor Tom Gifford, in the spirit of cooperation and in the spirit of understanding that the village will be benefiting from this potential Greenway Trail as being within the town. I asked Mayor Tom Gifford, and also because of his great love for biking, I think everybody knows that, to be on the committee. He has agreed, and so I want to make a motion for an amendment to add Mayor Tom Gifford to the 9th member of the committee. Do I have a motion?
I move
Do
it.
I have a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and second. Any discussion? And then we will take the vote on the amendment.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, amendment passes. We're back onto the resolution as amended, so it's all pretty much the same as I mentioned. That is the committee. And any questions or comments? Seeing none, please report.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Capson?
Yes, resolution passes as amended. Resolution 19, scheduling a public hearing on November 6th regarding the proposed local law to amend Chapter 27, Code of Ethics of the Code of the Town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, may I initially inquire what exactly is being amended? Is this a complete rewrite of the Code of Ethics, or is this just adding additional language?
Really adding additional language, and I know, obviously with all that's been going on and what's been called to our attention by the residents who come and spoke here, the town of Glenville has somewhat of an inadequate and outdated code of ethics. And so in looking at the village code and looking at the state's code, which I believe are pretty much mirror each other, the village adopted the state. We did not do that. We adopted a much smaller version of that. And so this would bring us in line with the state of New York and also help us mirror the village of Scotia.
So I guess here's my interest or concern with this proposal. I've been on the board now for about 21 months, and we have undertaken drastic reform to some of our laws. Specifically, we've bounced around a proposal to modify the solar law in West Glenville to allow for ground-mounted solar. We have bounced around revisions to the zoning code. We've met exhaustively to consider revisions to the zoning code. And I know with respect to revisions to the code regarding the solar law in West Glenville, there have been numerous meetings, there have been numerous contacts, there has been constituent reach out. And over the course of 21, 22 months on the board, we have gone through an intentionally exhaustive process, because when we are rewriting or we are changing law, it should be something that is done with proper consideration as opposed to haste or stealth. In this instance, we had two people stand up at the last meeting and address us during privilege of the floor and indicate their concerns. Their concerns, from my perspective, seem to be of a political nature as we round third and head towards home in our election season. And we've had two speakers tonight address similar concerns, and I'm not in any way criticizing our speakers. I think that's absolutely appropriate. That's what citizens should do. But in a town of 30,000, we've yet to hear from 29,996 people on this issue. Over the 22 months that I've been on the board, we've had a lot of issues come up. We've had speakers come up talking. Judy Reitmeyer has come and asked about paving her road. She didn't get a public hearing. Peter Looker has come and talked about lights. He didn't get a public hearing. It took neighborhoods to enact change. And when I say that, I specifically reference efforts to move the location of the police gun range, efforts to prevent mass development in the hamlet of Outlaws, efforts to limit development adjacent to Woodruff Heights. And in those circumstances, I witnessed, in one instance, was a part of filling this room with people to undertake or enact change. So I'm a bit baffled as to the timing of this. I am concerned that in 22 months on this board, we have governed ourselves respectfully as a split board representing two different political parties who account for approximately 65 to 66% of our residents here in town. And I fear that here in the waning months, or waning days of October, heading into an election that certainly has a lot at stake here at the town level, that we are addressing the issue, an important issue of ethics, without ferreting it through the proper channels. What I would propose is, if we're serious about ethics reform in this town, then we should do what we've done for zoning revision, what we've done for considerations to the solar law. We should convene a committee. The Republicans on the board should pick half of the members, the Democrats on the board should pick half of the members, and we should find a chairman that is ethically beyond reproach, somebody tied to either local clergy, local military, local law enforcement, who has no political affiliation, who's not a donor to any of the local committees, who's not a committee person, and we should get them in a room and have them consider ethics reform. This is done hastily. It's done in the shadow of an election. I am concerned about the fact that there are members of this board that wear multiple hats, both as representatives of the town and representatives of political committees. And my concern is that this law is being offered with politics being considered over the interests of the town. Now, this proposal is just for a public hearing, and the public are employers that pay our salaries. I am certainly open to hearing what they have to say, but to undertake a vast amendment to our code of ethics based on 2 speakers at our last town board meeting, talking primarily about our elections, I think is improper.
Well, thank you. I find it a little humorous that when you started your comments, you said you were on the board 21 months, and when you ended, you said 22 months. So that was a pretty long filibuster there.
It was
I appreciate that. I made a sandwich, ate it, and now I'm ready to respond. You know, just to correct some of your assertions, we do convene committees. We are going to convene a committee during the organizational meeting in January to look at a much broader look at this. We've had multiple people. We've had more than 2 speakers. We've had 4 speakers. We've had more than that reach out. We had another one here today send a letter in that wants to be put into the record that the clerk has. So it's obviously a concern. It's a huge concern. You know, would you reference the 4 people that have made concerns over solar? We have looked at that. But 4 people, please do not try to overinflate what drove that. 4 people. If there's one person concerned about something, we look at it. And we're looking at this now. Freeman's Bridge Road, the massive code rewrite we're doing there, nobody came forward. Nobody. That was town initiated. Because the town saw a need to do something. It's called leadership, Councilman. When you see a need, and what was brought to our attention, and I think it's great of us as a board to be able to come forward and say, you know what? Our code of ethics is woefully inadequate. There's obviously a tremendous threat to the town of Glenville and its residents if you have such a violation of a code of ethics that the Village of Scotia is not going to enforce it. Then we have to look at this and say, for the best of our residents and the best for the town of Glenville, is to make sure we do not have these conflicts. These people have real concerns. I have real concerns. I've been serving this town for 12 years, and I've never seen a conflict of all the people that have come onto this board that we are going to see here with Andrew Cohen. Never. Never seen it. It's clear that it's against village law. It's clear it's against state ethics law. It's clear it's against the opinion of the Attorney General. It's time now for the town of Glenville to do what's right. Now, this will only call for a public hearing, as you point out. I don't understand how anybody could be against listening to the public on such an important issue. That's what this is about. This is about calling for a public hearing and listening to the public. As you recall, we did that with Freeman's Bridge Road. What happened? After we listened to the public, we went back to the drawing table, we had another forum, we had other meetings, and we went back and we talked about it. That may very well be what happens here. For you to cast aspersions is just your own paranoia about politics that you're bringing into this conversation. We're doing what we think is best for the town of Glenville. We want to hear from the public. We want to strengthen our ethics law. For the life of me, I don't understand who wouldn't want to strengthen their ethics law. But, you know, you want to conflate people doing volunteer work on political parties with someone who's an employee of the Village of Scotia who wants to be on the board and still have the ability to have control over budgets that deal with the village, rate setting that deal with the village and the town. The conflicts go on and on. But to try to conflate that with somebody who does a civic duty out there for the political party, which, please, let's not start going down that road and do a nice map of the county employees who are in leadership positions. Now, You want to say that there's a problem for me to be chairman of a political party and supervisor of the town of Glenville. But you were silenced, and so are all of your cohorts, when Joe Landry was in the same role. That was fine then. It's also seemingly fine for you that Joe Landry is the director of public works for the county in a policymaking position, and he can continue to be the chairman of the Democratic Party. So please don't be disingenuous. We can have a debate on this, but be true, have integrity, and please don't try to muddy the waters because you know this is a conflict with Andrew Cohart. You know that. Now, we are on the resolution. Any other questions or comments? Again, this is a resolution calling for a public hearing to hear the public on the matter of our ethics law. Please call the roll.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
To explain my vote and just to address some of the statements made by Supervisor Ketzling. There are, where do I begin? There are opinions out there with respect to whether someone can simultaneously serve as a director of public works in a village and as a town council person on a town board within that town. As the only lawyer elected to serve on this board, I have read those opinions, I am familiar with those opinions. There is a 1977 Attorney General's opinion that says exactly that there is no conflict for a director of public works within a village to serve as a town board member within a town. That opinion makes reference to a comptroller's opinion from the 60s that echoes those sentiments. The opinion that's being cited by Republican committee people, by the chair of the Republican Party, and the town supervisor of our town is a 1985 opinion or 1989 opinion that doesn't make reference to the 1977 opinion. It cites a different position within a village, and it also is vague as to the involvement between the town and between the village. There are different models throughout the state of New York as to towns and villages. Locally, we look at Scotia, we look at Ballston Spa, we look at Lake George as what we view our town and village model to be. But that's not the case across New York. There are a number of villages that consist of very small municipal entities, very small taxing authorities. When the snow comes or when there's issues with the roads, it is standard fare for the town Department of Public Works to assist and perhaps just essentially take over that service. That's not the case here. Something that was stated earlier was that there weren't any questions asked during our work session on the budget, and I think that is a disingenuous statement. There were a lot of questions asked, and I know that because I was the one asking them. And one of the questions I asked during that time period was, what funds can be transferred between highway and can highway funds be allocated to A fund? Can they only be allocated to B fund? And is that best practice? And is that governed by
Councilman, I'm going to rule you out of order. Please stay on the resolution.
I'm
We
responding.
can make comments later about
Mr.
that.
Supervisor, I'm responding directly to statements that you made.
But you're on a vote on a resolution.
And I
You're on a vote on a resolution.
Supervisor,
You'll have
I
a
will get to
chance
my
to
vote.
talk later.
I will get to my vote, Mr. Supervisor.
I will rule you out of order.
Then you're going to stymie my ability to vote?
I'm asking you to vote.
Mr. Supervisor, my vote is yes. I do want to hear from the public on this. I think it's appropriate to hear from the public on this. But frankly, as undertaken with the stealth, the quickness, and with the constituents that voted on it, I do think that this is frankly a sham. And I think that this is political cover, and I think this is an attempt to influence the election of November 5th.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Since all I'm voting on is a public hearing to hear from the public, I'm going to vote yes.
Supervisor Ketzling?
To explain my vote, and I'll keep it germane to the resolution, I think some of what Councilman Godlewski has brought up is wholly disingenuous. And attorney or not, and maybe I didn't go to law school and I'm just a little old supervisor of a little old town, But
and chair of the Republican
you're
Party.
19, can we keep it cordial or are we going to continue to?
I'm keeping it cordial.
I let you speak. 1977 opinion that the councilman is referring to has a particular phrase attached to it that he keeps omitting, he keeps forgetting to say. It's per se. He's an attorney, he knows what that means. Per se means not within its certain circumstance, not on its face, not necessarily. But that leaves open the question of then in what circumstances may it be a conflict? And what the good counselor will not tell you is the 1977 opinion does not consider that. They do not go on to consider that. So it's wholly appropriate that in 1985 the comptroller takes a look at it again and says, you know what, the 1977 opinion obviously is not adequate. They said per se, meaning potentially but not on its face. So they look at it and they say, in their analysis, in their opinion letter, and I would ask anyone to please look this up, and I'll provide it. They talk about the divided loyalties that could exist. They use the word divided loyalties within the opinion between the highway superintendent of the village, within a town, and being on the town board. There are too many divided loyalties. They specifically talk about the budget. They specifically talk about the divided loyalties within the budget. The 1985 opinion improves the 1977 opinion. Now, couple all of this with the fact that the Village of Scotia has an ethics code that says clearly, no employee, and this is clear, no employee, whether full-time or part-time, paid or unpaid, may engage in any other employment that in any way would question the independence of their judgment. The Attorney General in 1985 just told you that's impossible. Just told you that. It's clear. Divided loyalty. Why we would not vote to hear the public. Why people want to sweep it under the rug until after an election. The only one injecting politics in this discussion is Councilman Galuski. He's the one referring to the election continually. We have not injected politics into this at all. We want to hear, because this is an important issue to the town of Glenville and the people within this town. I vote yes, the resolution passes. Next resolution, 21, approving monthly departmental reports for September 2019. Do I have a motion? Oh, the Halloween one. Well, we can't forget about Halloween. Next one is Resolution 20, scheduling Halloween to be celebrated within the town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, this is the town of Glenville sets a time and a date for the trick-or-treating between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Halloween night, October 31st. And it also authorizes the chief of police to have printed notices for a safe Thursday Halloween and have them distributed to the neighborhood watch groups, schools, churches, newspapers, and any other location deemed appropriate. And I believe that that's also in accordance with the Village of Scotia also that does that with us.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Pilavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Ketzler?
Yes, resolution passes. Resolution 21, approving the monthly departmental reports for September 2019. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution would approve the reports distributed by the various department heads for the month of September to board members via email. Hopefully at this time we've been able to review those reports.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Pilavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Ketzler?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is the add-on 1, authorizing the town board to waive a certain chapter related to food and alcohol beverages in Indian Meadows Park on behalf of the Boston Lake Junior Baseball fundraising event. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
As noted, Mr. Supervisor, this would allow for consumption of alcohol use and consumption within the town park. This limited time period that the HPL undertakes all that's having their events. We've done this for a number of events for specific circumstances. And this would occur in Meadows, January 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2020.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Ketzler?
Yes, resolution passes. Now we're on to new business. And we start on my right with Councilman Pittavani. Any new business?
I would just like to mention, you mentioned it earlier, that I have been out and that I had heart bypass surgery done, and I would like to thank everyone who came to visit me, sent me a card, or emailed me. I really appreciate it. It meant a lot to me. So thank you very much.
I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Councilman Aragosa.
Just two small things. Tomorrow night, Riverside Maple Farm is hosting the Chamber of Capital Region for a business after hours event from 5 to 7. Also, tomorrow night, 5:30 at Water's Edge Lighthouse, the Bethesda House is holding a fundraiser. That starts at 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Godlewski.
I have any business.
Councilman Wozzachowski. I do have one bit of new business, and it's really old business. It's actually 5-year-old business, but I do want to just set the public record straight because it needs to be set straight. It's the silly season, as has been referenced a couple of times, and I know you all know this on the board because as board members, it's your job to know it. But there seems to be some crazy things out there being said by at least some of the candidates. One of them has to do with our parks. And it's shameful that candidates who want to run for town board do not understand municipal law. It's really shameful. But we do need to review it. Town law, New York State Town Law, 220, permits towns to establish public parks, and then also to equip those parks. Town law, New York State Town Law, which we are governed by, 232 requires the financing of any improvements or purchases for that park must be assessed. That's a must. M-U-S-T. There's no gray area there, as much as you guys like to try to find it. Must levy and collect all taxes from all taxable property within the town of Glenville, or within the town. Town Law 245, New York State Town Law 245, requires that when improvements are constructed and completed, they shall, attorneys know that's a mandatory term, they shall be charged against the parcels which the cost of the improvements were charged originally, in this case, parks, meaning that parks maintenance must be charged to all taxable property within the town. Now, these statutory principles have been upheld by the state comptroller in his opinions. Quote, the expense and maintenance of public recreational areas in a town and the running of a town department of parks is a town-wide charge. State comptroller, quote, 25, that's an opinion 25, back in 1969. The position was restated in an appellate division when the village of Ardsley took on the town of Greenberg, and most recently in another appellate division where it was determined that town taxpayers could sue the town if we did not properly apply that tax town-wide to all taxpayers. Meaning taxpayers in the B fund could sue because we weren't properly applying that charge. The bottom line is what the town is doing is not only required by law, it's required by the state comptroller. This is not something that Supervisor Ketzler wanted to do or did do. This is not something that anybody on this board wanted to do or did do. It was brought to us in an audit 5 years ago, where this was all provided to the Scotia mayor, by the way, back then, that what we were doing was wrong. It was improper. The history on it was in 1998, just so everybody has the history of how this all happened. In 1998, the supervisor at the time, Wayne Wagner, moved parks in his tentative budget with no explanation for the move or in his budget memo. So prior to 1998, it was always done properly, the way it should be done. It was moved. It's been that way ever since. Over 5 years ago, it was brought to our attention in an audit that we have that improper in the wrong fund and it must be moved. This is not the town of Glenville trying to punish the village of Scotia. This is not any person trying to do anything to anybody else. It is the town of Glenville following the law and doing what we need to do, because that's ethics. That's what we do. So I do want to just make sure everybody understands it, because I'm quite certain not everybody does.
Can we ask
No.
questions if we don't understand?
You could ask questions if you don't understand.
Okay. So what you're saying, Mr. Supervisor, and this is something that I did bring up at the budget work session, a question I asked. For the past 5 years, has the town of Glenville been contributing money to a line item for Collins Park?
Okay, so you're off topic again, but we'll answer the question because it's
I thought we were
it's a
talking
question.
about parks.
Well, we're talking about the A fund, the B fund. We have provided money not to Collins Park. And I think you know this because you have been with the budget for 22 months now. We provided money into a youth program that is largely defunct at this point. That each year we have asked, in order for us to pay for this, what we need from you is to tell us how many of our residents are taking part in the program. Each year that request was denied. It wasn't no communication, it was denied. So you do not need to know that. And I said, you know what, we do need to know that because the town taxpayers are paying for this program. And we need to know how many people outside the village in the city of Schenectady are into this. It came to light that we had nobody. We had nobody. So it didn't make sense to continue to fund a defunct program that none of our residents were taking advantage of. And that's where we are now. I will tell you where we do give money and where we've increased it dramatically under this board, Gina, myself, and John, is the Freedom Park. Because we believe that's a great program. We support that program. That's in the village of Scotia, you might have realized, but we provided more funding to that. We've increased that funding significantly over the past couple of years. So we do provide funding into the park, and we've increased that funding.
So we are able to provide funding to village parks.
That's not parks.
That's
music.
that's
An
in-
event.
Yeah, we
Freedom
provided,
Parks Directly.
it's to the program.
It just sounds like we're splitting hairs.
No, that's not, we're not splitting hairs. That's not a village park.
Freedom Park is not a village park.
That is not a village program, the Freedom Park.
That's not the line item. Line item is for the Freedom Park Music Series.
Right.
Right.
Not
Freedom Park.
It's not the village, they have their own board.
But does it not benefit?
It's a nonprofit.
Okay. And we are, just for my own edification, there hasn't been a change. We are zeroing out the amount of money in the Collins Park line, correct? In this year's proposal.
For that program.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Seeing no other new business, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second? Move second, all in favor? We're adjourned.